I'm Adam Vagley. I'm a partner at Soul Consulting in Los Angeles, and I'm here today to talk about setting up an AI program at your company. It seems like every company, no matter how big, slow moving, or risk averse, is rushing into AI given the excitement. But there are 5 things you need to do to make sure that your AI program delivers on the intended business outcomes. The first is setting up the right governance structure. Any good PM knows how important governance is to a project success, and it is especially true given how new AI is. One model that works well is setting up a centralized governance body that sits over the individual business groups. That body has representation from the business, IT, legal, information security, and vendor management, and they're setting up the standards, policies, and processes for the rest of the organization. They're also approving funding and individual use cases, which I'll talk about here in a minute. At the business group level, you'll have sponsors that are bringing use cases to this body for approval and are ultimately responsible for the business outcomes of those use cases. The second thing, which is kind of a double click into the governance, is partnering really closely with legal and information security. Especially in big companies, the first rule is don't mess things up. And on the legal front, there are a few things to be aware of. One, AI is new, as mentioned. So there are jurisdictions around the world writing regulations as we speak for AI. You want to make sure your solution doesn't run afoul of any new regulation. 2, there could be new employee policies needed or updates to your terms of use needed. And thirdly, you want to make sure that you're protecting the data from your organization. So especially with vendor-based solutions, do they have access to your data? Can they see your queries or query responses? You want to make sure legal is reviewing any contracts closely to, again, make sure that you are protected. And then in that same vein, information security should be along for the ride as well. You want to make sure, as with any new solution, that you're not introducing any new risks into your organization, that you're not exposing sensitive data with your solution. So you want them closely involved, not just at that centralized governance body level, but also as use cases are approved and moved forward at that project level as well. The third thing you want to be doing is making sure that any AI initiatives are use case based. There are a lot of cool, shiny new AI tools out of there. You could spend a lot of money and resources chasing after those. So you want to orient what you're doing around business objectives with specific outcomes that have been identified. The fourth thing you want to do is strike this delicate balance of optimizing for both risk management and speed. So one way you do that is by having that centralized governance body as this gating mechanism and having a strong intake process for things to go to that forum and get approved, at which point the project teams can just run with them. So as you think about your intake process, you want to make sure that you've captured the scope of the initiative. What are you trying to learn to deliver? How is it different from how the business works today? What are the expected outcomes and how you measure success? What is the cost to implement this new solution? And then who are the sponsors of this initiative? Because as mentioned, they're responsible for the business outcomes. And so how this might look is you've got that information in some standardized template that goes to the centralized governance body. If approved and funded, there would then be a risk assessment conducted to make sure that it can proceed, at which point, as mentioned, the project team can just run with it. And in the future, at some agreed upon milestone, perhaps that project comes back to the centralized body, for example, before launching globally for a final review and approval. The fifth thing you want to do is set expectations about the rate of change. AI is changing rapidly. Even big vendors like Microsoft seem to be throwing things over the wall that aren't quite completed just yet. So it's important to set expectations with your users, with your customers, that any AI tool they're using will likely change frequently. Things happen weekly, even daily with some solutions. So getting people in the right mindset to expect that is important, so they don't get upset. I hope these tips were helpful. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you can find me on X or LinkedIn at Adam Vagley. Thank you.